This is Paula's only chance, and she's been waiting for this chance and wanted to say this all along, Judge. This is her only chance, and I know she wants to take it to make her statement.
Thank you, Attorney Misloff. Paula, you have the right to address the court. Is there anything you want to tell me and the people that are in the courtroom today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Speak up into the mic.
I would like to address the Bender family specifically. I am so very sorry for the immeasurable pain and devastation I have caused so many people. I am so sorry for my actions, my choices. I know I caused this tragic event. I decided to drink, I drove, and I caused the death and serious injuries to Brian and Griffin. I caused the emotional damage and lifelong impacts to Jessica, Reese, Brian's parents, brothers, nieces, countless other family members and friends. This experience has forever changed me. The weight of all this pain I've caused is crushing, and I will carry it with me always. It's also helped me see a deeper understanding of faith and prayer, and to try to find God in small ways. I will continue with counseling and look for any opportunity to add good back into the world wherever I can, to make up for even a little bit of what I've taken out. I recognize I cannot come close to what Brian would have done, but will support any activities that you all have mentioned as being so important to your family. I'd also like to focus on programs to prevent driving under the influence and the Hyacinth Fellowship. Finally, I am grateful to my family and friends for showing me what compassion means and for all the support they have given. For the strength and graciousness the Bender family, especially Jessica, has shown over this very difficult time, and the understanding and grace they have shown regarding the impact on my children. And lastly, for the opportunity to be able to support my children emotionally and at some point financially. Thank you, Your Honor.
Connie said she asked God for help in saying the right thing. You know, I had the same prayer today. And for making the right decision, because it's going to be inadequate for everybody. No one's going to be happy. The court's not going to be happy. I just want to say I've never seen such a gathering in my life. So many emotions and so many good people. We never see these many good, solid, compassionate people in court. It's a blessing. God is in this courtroom today. If I could, I'd say, let's say the Our Father together, because it would be very appropriate. Or a Hail Mary like Griffin did that night when he was in that car. I hope the letters that have been written and the beautiful testimonials in some way will help people heal. And in some small way, maybe give them some peace of mind. So bear with me, I have a lot of thoughts, but I've been thinking about this case for a year. Every time I go past that ISA building on 41, I think of this case. Every time I go down 41, I see Little Rapids Road. I used to think of our dog because that's where we got it at the kennel down the street. Now all I do is think of this case. It has consumed me recently. I went down that road. I went to Max. I went on that frontage road. I went on French, going north towards Little Rapids Road. It's not that difficult to navigate if you're sober. Well, one thought I had is when I was a kid, I went to Badger Boys State in Ripon, in 1974, and they had speakers all week. And one night they had a Protestant minister who had a talk, and it started out by having an excellent kid, kind of like either Paula's kids or Brian's kids. Kid had everything going for him, great straight A student, great athlete, going to college. He's on top of the world, and he was at some national park, and of course they had it roped off before the gorge was, and he made a bad decision. He got underneath that chain link fence or whatever to get a better picture, and he slipped, and he fell to his death. And the minister's talk was, why do bad things happen to good people? What I do remember is he talked about regrettable decisions, making one bad decision. But he said so much more, and of course I can't remember it. But I wish I could. Because it would help me right now, and I'd pass it along to everybody. Why were the guardian angels asleep at the switch on April 12th? Well, we should talk about this accident. You know, I said, I went down the road, I think I know exactly where that accident took place. Now, alcohol's a drug, but it's not like other drugs like pot, meth, and cocaine. When people use those drugs, they're just trying to get screwed up, they're trying to get high, they're trying to be impaired. Alcohol, you have one beer after work, at a ball game, at a reception, at a function. I would hope you're not trying to get inebriated. Now some people do. If they just are drinking to get liquored up, well then I suppose there's no difference. But the problem is when you have too much, or you don't stop, and then your judgment is impaired. And then, if you're driving, if you choose to drive, you are, as one of the letters said, playing Russian roulette. You are driving a lethal weapon. And like I think Allie said, everybody knows you can't drive when you're impaired. All the literature, all the commercials, all the buzz driving commercials, everybody knows that, and Paul is intelligent. And she made that decision, and it's not just a mistake, and it's not just a bad decision, it's a crime. Well, first time OWI, still not a crime, which is amazing in this state, but to drive drunk really is a crime. Now she was .134. That's approaching twice the legal limit. Most cases we get, they're .2 or over. A lot of those people are kind of functioning alcoholics, right? She said in the PSI she had 3 to 4 pints at that first location. That's about 16 ounces. And then 3 beers later, if that's accurate, it comes out to about 8 full beers in about 4 hours. That's a lot to drink. And when I read the letters, I was led to believe, well, Paula didn't drink that much. She wasn't a big drinker. She's a pretty quiet gal. But in the PSI, beginning in 2020, she began going out with friends and coworkers once to twice a month. She'd consume 3 or 4 beers, sometimes as many as 7. So maybe it wasn't that strange a night. But whatever, she was intoxicated. Now, in that original statement, or not the original statement, I'll get to that in a minute, but she indicated she looked down for that water bottle, and that might be true. I was on a bridge once when there was a traffic jam, and I was idling, and I looked down to get a tape. Boom, I hit the car in front of me to the tune of a ticket and a full fine. Maybe that explains it. Because I'm thinking it's at night. How can you not see these headlights coming your way on that frontage road? She crossed that center line and she hit this car straight on, head on. And one thing I didn't know before today was how fast she was going. And I was thinking, well, how fast could she have been going to cause that much damage? 70 miles an hour on that damn frontage road? And what, Paula, you said that you thought you were going on the ramp. I understand that. But you said you realized you were on the frontage road. Why are you going 70 miles an hour? Because you were drunk, because you were impaired, because you'd made that god-awful, awful decision. It's just, we shouldn't be here. We should not be here. It's just, you know, if the court, I've said this before, if the court, you know what the best solution? If there was justice, I'd have a time machine. I'd have a magic wand. And we could turn the clock back and we could go back to the early evening of April 12th. And we could have been spared all of this. How many times do we want that magic wand if we say some words that are mean and we want to take those words back, or we do something else stupid? But that's not how life works, right? And here the consequences are devastating. They're just devastating. And the irony isn't lost on me that hundreds of people this weekend in this area are going to go out. They're going to go out after work. They're going to go to a ball game. They're going to have a couple of beers, and they'll probably have too many. And they're going to probably be, if not impaired, over the legal limit. And they're going to navigate, and they're going to get home, and nobody's going to think twice about it. If Paula had gotten on that ramp, she would have gotten home, and nobody would have thought twice about it. But the system addresses what you did, not what could have happened, not what you were thinking or what might have taken place. What happened is we had this horrific crash. Brian lost his life. But look at Griffin. Just for a minute. He had both femurs were broken. That's the strongest bone in the body. That's the impact that that accident had. Bilateral broken femurs, broken left wrist, right elbow injury, lung contusion. His letter goes on and on. It's a beautiful letter. It's hard to read, talking about his dad. But that was the impact of that crash. I mean, that's a factor. We can't, both attorneys, any attorney in court can make the most beautiful argument, but you can't change the facts of a case. And the facts are something the court has to look at. It is amazing, isn't it, that one awful, bad, stupid decision can have so much impact on so many lives. One decision. Again, I'm just thinking out loud. We have so many people that make bad decisions all the time. We have so many people that are just jerks, that are mean, they're not responsible, but they don't get in trouble, or they don't have consequences like this. When I read about a letter that talked about the family happiness of the Benders and the innocence of life, and now it's been replaced with looming sadness, this bad decision is like dropping a nuclear bomb on that family and in the community. And if it doesn't kill somebody, it's just totally changed these lives forever. I understand it's a mistake, and I understand it's an accident, but it's an intentional act, an intentional decision, and it's a crime. That's what we're dealing with. So the court has to look at the sentencing factors. There's a case called State versus Galleon, and it says you have to look at the seriousness of the offense, protection of the public, and the character of the offender. Then it also talks about other considerations, deterrence and punishment. Well, seriousness of the offense, we don't have to spend much time talking about that. It's, you know, murder is an intentional act in killing someone, but this is pretty close because someone died. I mean, Paula killed somebody. That pure and simple. That's what happened. Protection of the public. Anybody is at risk. Every time my kids go out and drive, I worry that they're going to come home safe. I mean, it's usually when they're on a long trip, although we know most bad accidents happen closer to home. But you worry about their abilities, but you worry about other people driving and other people that made a bad decision. We have to be protected. That's why we have these kind of draconian penalties for OWI cases to hopefully deter people from drinking and driving. It's probably only partially successful. We've had the dawn of designated drivers and so on, but that's also a consideration, but the sentence has to reflect that. I also have to look at the character of the offender. And that we go in an entirely different direction with Paula. I've received and reviewed all these letters. I've heard these beautiful statements about the kind of person she is, and I don't doubt that for a second. The compassion to her friend, to others, all the volunteer work that she's done for the community. I'll probably just quote from some of the letters in just a second, but these letters, I think the court, I think we've recognized that the Bender family and the people that support them, they're not coming here with pitchforks and demanding the moon. They're talking about their loss. They're showing incredible restraint and compassion. It's a beautiful reflection on that family. And those that support Paula and her family, their condolences are real. It probably doesn't add much, but it's real. And they're not minimizing. They're just explaining the kind of person she is, her character, which the court has to consider. So these are some of the descriptions of Paula in the letters. Valued at work, kind, loving, respectful, helpful, dedicated, responsible, hardworking, dependable, smart, successful, compassion, remorse, generous, thoughtful, honest, integrity, a leader, friendly, good parent. Aren't those the same kind of descriptions of Brian? And then some. I just mention that because the irony is that these two people, if these letters are accurate, are kind of cut from the same cloth. If they had met someplace, they might have been friends and been able to, talk about their families and talk about their kids. She's never been in trouble. One underage drinking ticket. She found her father dead. That has got to be an incredibly painful experience as well. But I noted this when Attorney Mishloff said she never quite recovered from that, and I understand that, but how is Griffin going to recover in his life? I mean, and of course the circumstances. are different. She doesn't have a criminal record. She doesn't have any antisocial behavior. I have to consider that. She's accepted responsibility. She didn't put the family through a trial, which may or may not have happened. And I think that's significant. Any incarceration on her will have a profound effect on Paula. It's going to be culture shock to her. I do have to address what happened right after the accident. The drunk person's usual comment, I had 2 beers. I want a lawyer. Attorney Mizwav's right, but I don't have to go about Dalton. I'm not going to consider that, but not because of any legal thing. Self-preservation is happening all the time in this system. I've seen it over and over again. Hell, I just had a case where a girl was driving 100 miles an hour, killed her friend in a car, and she jumped out and jumped in another car to get away. That is self-preservation. None of us know what we'll do in the wrong place, at the wrong time, under the wrong circumstances. Now, it is very disappointing to this court, because you'd like to think if all these letters about Paula's compassion and character are accurate, that there would have been a different response there. I thought she's probably in shock. Apparently she was. She was injured too, or the fact that she's closing her eyes. It doesn't bother me, but darn it, you know, when we were growing up, my dad would always say, if you get in an accident, you ask, did anyone get hurt, and is everybody okay? And you find out in the other car. And that it would have been just, it would have been really nice, Paul. I can't take it back, but how about that should have been the response, not, hey, can you hold off on the blood test? I understand it. I don't like it. I'm not going to hold that against you. I don't think I can, but I'm just telling you, it's really disappointing. But now we're hearing a lot about Paula today. We needed to hear about Brian, beginning with his brother, who was his best friend. Now, the statutes don't increase or decrease the penalty depending upon who the victim is. And Attorney Mishloff addressed this a little bit. In other words, the crime isn't any greater because the victim is important. You know, the president of or CEO of some company, or a star athlete, or a priest, or a nun, as opposed to maybe somebody who's a criminal, somebody who doesn't have a friend in the world, somebody who's homeless. Every person is God's gift. We know that. There are no titles in heaven. It's how you treat people. That's what's going to count. But it is important to know about the victim here. And it's important to know about the impact that it's had on the victim, the victims, actually everybody. Because that's a factor the court can consider and must consider to be fair. What a remarkable man Brian is, because he lives on. He's the guardian angel for his family now. A very good father, a very good husband, a very good son, very good best friend. I'm sure a very good coach. You know, coaches touch so many lives. Our kids were athletes. The coaches were so important in their lives. And all these letters about how it's affected those young kids. Reading to his children at night. Being a coach to his son. Anyone who's done that knows how special that is. He's a day brightener. He is, we need more Paulas, but we need more Brians in this world. I wish I'd known him. I wish I'd known him. I just express my condolences to the Bender family and to Paula's family as well. Words are cheap. They can't. I just wish there was some way to come up and have a satisfactory conclusion to this nightmare that's taken place. You know, to the parents of Brian, Attorney Mishloff, never want to bury one of your kids. Never. Under these circumstances, that's just awful. I have no doubt about Paula's remorse. Whatever was lacking originally, it's sincere now. I remember when I was I'm sorry about another story. When I was a kid, I was about 6 years old, in front of Big Boy on Military. We were at a stoplight, and there was a news report that a 21-year-old girl struck a 5-year-old kid who ran out from chasing a ball, and the child died. And my mom said, "That poor girl." And even at my young age, I said, "Why are you worried about her? You know, it's the child that died." And she said, "That poor girl is going to have to live with that she killed somebody the rest of her life." And that's going to happen here. It's just an observation. So Paula has that remorse, and I suppose it's difficult because it's a feeling of helplessness. You can't change anything. But I believe it's appropriate. The defense talks about mercy. Every judge wants to be merciful. I don't think judges want to be hanging judges, and you want to be merciful. There's a book I have, Beautiful Mercy. I don't have it with me. It's over in my chambers. There's a quote in there that's really significant to me. It says, "Mercy without justice dishonors everybody." And what is justice? I looked it up. People are to be treated impartially, fairly, and reasonably under the circumstances. That's what the court's supposed to do. Any court's supposed to do. Attorney Enley talked about other cases, and that's a good place to be. You want to be in a ballpark of a area where the recommendations and the sentences are appropriate, but you can't get too wedded to that, because every case has to be determined on its own facts and on the parties and their own history here. We had a case 5-6 years ago. Somebody was driving on a frontage road and struck a woman and her daughter. 2 people died. The sentence was 10 years. There were 2 deaths. Of course, we have 2 victims here. Then we had a case, 2 girls died on Oneida, and this woman got a much greater sentence, but the facts were different. She was drag racing, she was drunk, and she had drugs in her system, and she had a record. So all of those things have to go into this formula. And somehow the court's supposed to come up with a justified sentence. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? When I started in '87 in the DA's office, when I was the DA, you know what the penalty for drunk driving was? 5 years probation and a year in jail. That was kind of like the standard. Of course, back then, with domestic violence cases, the guy could beat up his wife, and the police would go over there and say, "Well, now you just walk it off, you just go around the block and cool down and don't do it again." See, we've come a long way. It's totally inappropriate, and the laws have changed. The one thing that irritates me, Paula, is you know, you're a thief. One of the statements, or letters, stated that, and I've heard, stole this, lost this, taken away. You're a thief. You are a thief, and you didn't have to do this. You took all of this away from that family, all this away from that community. there is no excuse for it. I am convinced that when you got into that car, you knew you were under the influence and you chose to drive. When you knew that you were on that frontage road, you chose to keep going. And you didn't, obviously you didn't slow down. Those are facts that the court has to consider in trying to be merciful. They're aggravating factors. But shame on you for stealing all of this. And I know you're a good person. I know that. But I have to say that because it's just, that's what I see here. That's the impact of one bad decision. And you know what? A father could get mad at his child and shake him like this. Child's injured for life. One bad decision. All it takes is one bad decision. And like some of these letters said, you can do all this good and then one slip and it gets kind of wiped out. And it really isn't fair. But that's kind of how things work. I know there are other letters that were excellent. One of the letters said that already in her own mind she's incarcerated. And I wish one of the letters said she was playing Russian roulette by drinking and getting behind the wheel. We could go on and on about all these analogies, and everything is accurate. Her touted accolades of attaining a higher education and great employment, which she has, had no factor in her decision to drink and drive. Every accomplishment she has attained will be forever overshadowed by the fact that she killed Brian and left Griffin injured. That's a sad fact of what we have here. So what does the court do at this point? The state is asking for 10 years plus 10. The PSI said 7 to 10. Seven to 10 years of initial confinement. And up to 5 years of extended supervision. Attorney Miswab is asking for 3 years initial confinement and a period of extended supervision. You know, the 3 years in this court's mind would unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense. Those are the standard language, but it would. It would. 5 years, the minimum mandatory, would unduly depreciate the impact and the seriousness of the offense, especially given the facts, as the court sees them, of how this accident came to be. I know that in those letters, some of the family members, they want the maximum. And you know what? If I were in their shoes, I would want the maximum too. We're only human. And believe me, it would be very easy to just lock the door, throw away the key, and say, you deserved it. But I can't do that. I shouldn't do that. We're not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth society. We can't become that. Especially when the court has to look at the big picture, and I got to consider those gallant factors. And one of them is the character of the offender. If she had a criminal record, if she'd had a prior OWI, if there were even worse facts, driving the wrong way on the road, the sentence would be greater. You know, the system is imperfect in so many ways. We see that all the time. And this is another example where the justice system is imperfect. There's no good answer here. But we have to resolve the legal system, the legal process. The court's going to impose somewhat less prison, but a significant period of prison for someone who's never been in trouble and otherwise has a clean, outstanding record. I'm going to impose a lot more extended supervision. And the irony is, Paula is probably the last person that needs a lot of extended supervision, but I know she's not going to forget, but I want a legal guardrail to make sure that she doesn't forget what happened here to the family. I think that is proper. So even though it's one accident, we have 2 victims here, and I will run the sentences concurrent or consecutive. On count 1, I'm going to impose 7 years initial confinement and 10 years extended supervision. And on count 2, 1 year initial confinement and 4 years extended supervision. Griffin was 14 years old when this accident took place, so I think 14 years of extended supervision is appropriate. That's 8 years plus 14 years. It's a 22-year sentence. And they're going to be conditions of probation, or conditions of extended supervision. Absolute sobriety, an AODA assessment and follow-through with recommended treatment. No contact unless the victim's family asks for it. No contact with the victim's family. No operation of a motor vehicle during the length of supervision without a valid driver's license, or unless an ignition interlock device is installed. On count 1, a $1,000 fine plus cost totaling $1,243. On count 2, $500 fine plus cost. It's a total of $1,663. I want 100 hours of community service, Paula, every year of that extended supervision. That's 1,500 hours of community service. It is a way to, in an imperfect way, to pay back to the community for the pain and suffering that you and you alone caused. Full-time employment or school, I'm sure that should not be a problem. Payment of all court obligations. The restitution figure I have, Attorney Emily, can you give me the updated figure again?
Yes, to Jessica Bender, that's $20,370.
$20,370.
And 65 cents.
65 cents.
And then to the Crime Victim Compensation Fund, $1,100.
$1,100.
Correct.
$21,470.65 is to be paid, and it will be paid. All right. I was trying to think of something to do on April 28th. The parents wanted, that's Brian's birthday, right? August. Okay, August 28th. I'm going to have the agent come up with some activity or something. I hope they can come up with something that Paula has to do every August 28th, because that's Brian's birthday. I also want Paula, and expect Paula once a year, with the supervision of the agent, to address, I don't care if it's a school or any other gathering, but your experience in this case, the dangers of drinking and driving. You can have a bigger impact than any judge or any teacher by having someone who's been there and who's had her life shattered, as well as the Bender family. I talked about Griffin. There are more than just bones that were broken and shattered. These lives have been broken and shattered, and you are going to talk to people about that in the hopes that will prevent someone else from ever doing something similar, resulting in this kind of tragedy. Attorney Misloff, how many days credit?
I have 77 days, Your Honor, 6 when she was arrested before she was released, and 71 from the day of the plea to today.
77 days credit.
Your
According
Honor,
to the PSI, Paula is not statutorily eligible for the Challenge Incarceration Program and not statutorily eligible for the Substance Abuse Program. That means she's going to serve her 8-year sentence, last 77 days. Attorney Misloff, is there anything else?
I have just a moment, Your
Go
Honor.
right ahead.
Your Honor, there's $25,000 posted that should cover the restitution and the fines.
All right. The bond posted can be applied towards restitution first and then the fines. Anything else? Attorney
No, Your Honor.
Henley?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Again, to the families, I just pray that there be some healing. And to Griffin, and really to Reese, but to Griffin, for some reason, God wanted your dad that night. But he wanted you to survive, and he wants you to live, and he's got good plans for you. And your dad will live on through you and your sister. And when I say Hail Mary in the future, I'll be thinking of you. Good luck to everybody.
Oh, Your Honor, I think there's
Oh.
5 years of revocation.
Oh,
I don't know if you said that.
is that a 5-year total?
Yeah, on count
3
one.
years, is it 5 years on count
It
one?
has to be 5 years of count one, yeah.
5 years revocation of license on count 1, 2 years on count 2. Concurrent.
Concurrent is fine, yeah.
All right. What was the blood draw fee?
$26.80.
$26.80 was the blood draw fee that had to be done pursuant to a search warrant. That will be paid as well. Did I forget anything else?
I don't think so, Your Honor, thank you.
Well, that's all right. I misread the fine. That makes sense to the court. Count 1, the fine was $1,000 plus costs. It's $2,243. For the record, fine and costs on count 1, $2,243. On count 2, it is $1,663. Anything else, counsel?
I think that's still enough bail money. Can't do the math
No.
in my head, but we're close.
That's the order of the court.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Good luck, everybody. We're adjourned.